Welcome back to the Ryan Magic Show. Beautiful human, thank you so much for joining. Today we're talking about advanced emotional healing work. And I was just about to do an episode on relationships, but before I did it, I did my own emotional practice and a bunch of grief came up and I could feel the distinct difference in my state of being before and after that processing work. And I knew I had to do an episode on emotions. It's been in the back of my mind for a while, but I'm really excited to go through this today and explain pretty thoroughly what's the purpose of emotional healing? What's this journey about? Why? And I'm going to share vulnerably my struggle with the emotional world, but also the different stages of emotional healing. And if you're someone that's quite advanced at this journey, you've done a lot of breath work or inner child work, trauma work, emotional somatic release work, you understand trauma, you understand your own emotional body, you're probably going to be someone that really understands what I go through today deeply and find a few key blind spots. If I had to guess, you'll find some blind spots in the way that you approach your emotional healing journey. Because that's been my experience. I've been on the emotional healing path for about six and a half years. And the first time, actually, probably more than that, to be honest with you, it's probably like 7 years. So when I first dove into it, there was a certain relationship that I had to form. And I had to do a lot of legwork to get to the point where I realized a lot of what I was doing wasn't actually supporting me deeply, but it was teaching me how to get to the point where I could support myself deeply. And I'll explain this thoroughly throughout the episode. But in a nutshell, I'm going to be going from start to finish, a comprehensive look through and understanding of the emotional healing world. What are all the ways in which we can do it? Why would we do it? How do people do it? I'm not going to say wrong because it's all part of the journey, but how do people do it ineffectively in a way that it doesn't actually get the benefit that it could if it was done with the nuance that I'll be sharing. So the reason that I felt called to do this episode is because emotions have the biggest impact in our capacity to live with freedom in life. People look for freedom in having a certain career success. People look for freedom by having certain financial abundance or a lifestyle, whereas emotions are the biggest predictor of whether someone is living in alignment with what they with choice, or whether they're living and being unconsciously controlled by fear. Emotions have the biggest determining factor as to whether someone lives with freedom or whether they live in fear. That's what I'm going to be explaining this episode. So taking it back and just giving some context, I was always known and admired as, from the people in my circles at least, and the people that kind of pedestaled me when I was more of a hardcore workaholic, that I was pretty emotionless. I was able to deal with super high stress situations and I seemed quite calm. And people would ask me, how do you not get emotional about this stuff? How do you not let this stuff trigger you or affect you? And the answer I gave back then is, I've just worked so hard and I've gotten so good at dealing with stress. Incorrect, wrong, The reason that I was emotionless is because I was secretly terrified of the well of pain that was buried deep in my body, my emotional body. And I had no understanding that it was there. And I had no interest in finding it either, because I couldn't see through the way that I viewed the world, the problem and the problems that existed without emotional health. I didn't see the utility in it. What's the point of feeling emotions? It's just going to stop me from being more successful. It's going to impact my productivity. I'm going to become softer. How is that going to help me in any way succeed more, achieve more, go bigger, get to the end of my life knowing that I've given every last breath to uncover my potential in life? How are emotions going to help that? And the answer is they won't. They won't feed that deep, insecure, fear-based drive that used to consume my entire set of priorities and motivation in life. Because I was driven by the fear that I wasn't lovable for who I was. And instead I needed to become somebody that was worthy of love. And I didn't know this at the time, but that's what was driving for me. And that gave me the ability to be so driven by control and fear that my emotions were completely suppressed. And again, people in my life would praise me for this. But there were consequences under the surface that I didn't even know about. One was I ended up getting adrenal fatigue. So my adrenals completely, they kind of like faded out or overdrived and then depleted to zero. And so on the surface, oh, you're so calm, how you're so driven, blah, blah, blah. But under the surface, it was having the emotions, even though the emotions were there. I didn't know that they were there, but they were there and they were running a ruckus and they were causing all sorts of problems in my body. And this is the thing. Emotions are the cause, the root cause of all physical ailments, all disease, all addictions, and all negative life circumstances. Yeah. Emotions are the cause of all disease, all physical. You've got a sore shoulder? It's emotional. In cause. That doesn't mean it couldn't also have had a physical, it couldn't have been caused physically, but the reason that it was caused physically is an even deeper cause that's emotional. And so emotions are the absolute foundational reason behind why anyone gets any form of physical pain, disease, injury, any form of allergy that they have, any ailment. It's also the cause of any negative life situation and every addiction that someone has. So the reason that I'm passionate about emotional development and healing work is because it is the ticket to freedom. If you think you're going to be freed from finances by getting more money, you won't be. Because when I was making close to $5 million as an annual revenue in my business, I was completely chained to my attachments of being a somebody. So I didn't have the choice. If I wanted to go on a trip, if I wanted to spend time with my friends, if I wanted to launch some aspect of my business that I was really passionate about, I couldn't just do that stuff. I couldn't, because if it was going to have an impact on profit and it's going to jeopardize me hitting the goals that I was attached to, that I believe that if I did hit would make me worthy and achieve enough and be successful enough that I was lovable. If anything was going to jeopardize that, it was a threat and I couldn't do it. I couldn't give myself permission to do the things I loved most in business because I had to do the things that were going to make me achieve the highest, which inevitably caused me to burn out, burn down, break down, to have business setbacks and failures and adrenal fatigue and all these problems. But at the time, people were applauding me for my disconnection to emotion, my ability to push through, my drive, ambition, etc., my stoic nature. But under all of that was intense emotional suppression. Why would I want to suppress my emotions? Well, the reason why, and this is why this is the biggest contingent factor for whether people are free or not in life, whether they can actually live what they want to live from their heart, authentically, in alignment. The reason it's emotions is because when people have an inability to express themselves emotionally and a fear of feeling, even if those emotions aren't controlling your life by what you see, like you're feeling this and feeling that everywhere, under the surface, it's dictating all of the unhealthy patterns and behaviors in your life. All addiction comes from emotional suppression. All addiction comes from emotional suppression. Everything. And the reason, so what happens is we have emotional pain from our childhood. Everyone in this generation does, because instead of being a child that is seen for who they are, who are we? We're the person who shows up in every moment authentically. If someone steals your toy when you're 4 years old, you start crying about it and your mum says, keep it down, we're trying to concentrate. Or you jump up on a table and you're like, ta-da, and you're like doing this performance and you get shut down and it really hurt your feelings. And then someone says, don't cry, it's okay, don't cry. And you don't, because you're trying to get it right, you're trying to be a good boy or a good girl. The emotion was there, it was just an incompleted cycle. Trauma happened, emotion happened, and the unexpressed emotions from childhood that in those moments came with the belief that who I was wasn't enough. When we're not celebrated for all of our expression as kids, there is emotion still in there. There's emotion still in there. And there is also, because it wasn't felt back then, it was suppressed and it's stuck in there. That's why when you think about someone that you love passing or something difficult from the past, there is a cathartic re-engagement to that emotion. Like if you think about someone or something that happened in the past and it makes you cry all of a sudden, how does it just make you cry? It's not happening in the moment. So it's coming up and it was in you. It was already in you. And then it got triggered and you felt the emotion in the present, even though the thing that was causing the emotion in the present was from way back when. So that means the emotion was stored in your body. So emotions store in the body. And if they're not expressed as children, then they get suppressed and they're still in there, firstly. But also in the moments where they were suppressed, we weren't encouraged or celebrated for who we were. We developed the belief that who we are is not enough. Who we are is not enough. So there's a problem going on here. That, in a nutshell, we're in a society where emotional expression is not celebrated. And so people are going around none the wiser that there are emotions dictating most of their behavior. They don't realize that emotions are impacting and directing what they choose to do, how they choose to do it, what behavior, all the behaviors they don't want to do that they do anyway are ways that their body and mind are trying to avoid feeling pain. Because the whole of society is set up in some particular way of social norms that don't encourage, celebrate the regular, consistent regulation of emotion. It's not normal to cry. Someone starts crying in their workplace if someone says something mean or something happens that hurts their feelings and they went to cry, everyone will be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Don't cry, please don't. So it's just people assume there's some big wrong thing going on. But then everyone's walking around carrying all this unexpressed emotion. So when someone's feeling it because they don't feel theirs, they think there's something wrong with that other person. But they're not even aware that their emotions are all over the place and being suppressed. And then they're like, whoa, what's wrong with this person? When they also have that inside of them. They just don't feel it. But just because they don't feel it or they're not aware of it, it doesn't mean it's not dictating their behavior. And this is the problem with emotional suppression. Emotional suppression leads to addictive tendencies, unhealthy behavioral patterns, and then physical damage and life circumstances that are unfavorable. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm just going to chip away at it one piece at a time. If I was to say to someone that's addicted to coffee, hey, you're not having coffee anymore. Okay. If they were to turn around and say, damn, I really love coffee. It's such a beautiful addition to my day. I feel such a delicious thing to have. I love it. That'd be a real shame. They're kind of like, oh, damn, I love coffee. That would, to me, be a healthy response and would tell me that they're not addicted to it. But if someone was to be like, why would you do that? Why would you take that away from me? Like, and there's some need, not a want, not a nice, this would be a beautiful thing in my life. but an attachment to it, that's the sign that that coffee is an addiction. And if I was to take the addiction away, what would happen? Why would someone so ruthlessly defend something like that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's a form of sedation, suppression, and a tactic to avoid feeling. It's a tactic to avoid feeling. And because I'm just going to go there anyway and just trust that this will land. Because we have these two aspects of our consciousness. We have our head and we have our heart. Our heart desires freedom, fulfillment. It's the part of us that wants to go after our dreams and confess our love and live like a really fulfilling, expansive life. And it believes that that's going to happen by constantly walking into the unknown. Every time you're going to do some growth thing or adventure out there, or freedom is like constantly moving into the unknown. Problem with that is that we have the other aspect of our consciousness, our head, that is survival based. It's not based on freedom and fulfillment. Its primary motive is, I need to keep this person alive. And the way I'm going to do that is the opposite to what this part of our consciousness over there is doing, of like putting us into the unknown. No. I want to keep this person safe. And to do so, I've got to keep them in the known, in the familiar. So we have these two parts. Head wants survival in the familiar. Heart wants freedom in the unfamiliar, right? That's why our heart is calling us into the unknown, calling us to these big, beautiful ideas and creations. And like you're in a job that you don't like, your heart's like, let's go after what we love to do in this world. Let's be with someone that values us, where we can have this amazing experience with them, not just stay in this relationship where we get mistreated or it's safe, but it's not really fulfilling me. But the head's like, you can't leave. You're going to be all alone. The head's like, you can't leave this job. You're going to run out of money. And the head, which is survival based, is trying to keep us in the known. The heart is trying to keep us walking into the unknown. So the reason that we say we're in two minds is because we have two aspects of our consciousness. We can be in one or the other. Now, because the head is fear-based, it believes the only way I'm going to keep this person safe, the strategy is to control. That's the strategy of the head. It's to control. It's to control. And so it wants to control whatever it can to keep us in the familiar, to keep us safe, steady, predictable. I need to make sure that this person doesn't do anything that could be a threat, dangerous. We can't lose control because then we're going to be unsafe, right? Now, if we think about emotions for a second, being fully authentic, going with the flow, being in the moment, living in the present is unpredictable. The heart wants that, but the head doesn't. So the head tries to control us. But emotions, on the other hand, feeling emotions, especially with the history as a child of not being celebrated or seen or been with during the emotions in a healthy way for most of us, the head's like, I've got to control and stop this person from being in their emotions because they are out of control. When someone's in their emotional body, they are out of control. And I don't want that. I want them to be in control because if they're out of control, they're unsafe. So the head, the fear body, fear consciousness, the survival brain says no to emotions. No, we're not going to feel them. And what it does then, the way it controls someone stops them from feeling emotions, stops them from being vulnerable, stops them from losing control. If someone starts crying at work, they're out of control. The head doesn't want that. It wants to control and sedate it. And the way that it'll do that is two main strategies. Addictive tendencies, because addictive tendencies, they control someone's state to distract them away from the pain, the emotional pain, the vulnerability, okay, the emotional vulnerability, the unpredictability, because it creates a state shift. If someone has a coffee, boom, boom, adrenaline, cortisol, we're on, boom, and it shifts the sensory experience. So instead of being with the emotions over there, boom, the focus goes away, distracts by shifting the emotional state, the senses. It shifts the sensory experience away. Same thing, and the more intense someone's emotional pain is, the more they're going to have to try to shift their emotional state away from it. So the reason that people drown themselves away in alcohol and end up addicted to drugs is because these things shift the state, the sensory experience that we're having away from the emotional pain. But then when the alcohol wears off and they start to sober up, what's going to come to the surface? All that suppressed emotion starts to come up, and boom, they've got to start drinking again because they don't want to feel and be with the emotional pain. If someone's able to sit with their emotional pain, if somebody is able to feel the pain, then there is no need for the head to control them with addictive tendencies. Addictions only exist to distract away from emotional pain. Can't stop yourself emotionally eating, can't stop scrolling, can't stop watching porn. It's because you don't know how to feel what's present, or you're not aware of the fact that there's things underneath that need to be felt. The head definitely doesn't want you to know, hey, guess just so you know, I'm thinking maybe we have some coffee right now, but I just want to let you know that there's some sadness underneath. And if you feel it, we won't need the coffee. No, it doesn't say that. It wants to control you at all costs to have you avoid going into that sadness, right? So addiction is used as an emotional suppressant. The other way that the head, which wants to keep us in the familiar, keep us under control, the other way that the head controls us is with protection strategies. Personality patterns, protection strategies, safety strategies, behaviors. So if I took someone's coffee away, they'd start to get annoyed, frustrated at me. It's an inauthentic, automated way of behaving that people have that distracts them from their feelings. Yeah. And it keeps them in control, keeps them in the familiar. So people might use a manipulator personality pattern, protector strategy. The person might, and then they start to feel in their relationship, this is one that I do, start to feel vulnerable, and then I flip the focus away from me so I don't go closer towards that emotion, that pain. I flip it on my partner and I start judging. So a judger is a protector strategy. I start controlling or manipulating and flipping the conversation and the focus on her, things that she's not doing well or right, or just making the focus away from me so I don't magnify that emotional pain and I distract away from it. If I took someone's coffee away and one of their addictive strategies away, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to, if I was like out with a person and they were addicted to coffee and that's a way that they kept their emotional pain under wraps, and they're like, oh, I forgot my wallet at home, but I haven't had my coffee and I'm really needing it. Can you give me some money? And I was like, no. They'd start to get annoyed. They'd start to get frustrated because it's not just a nice, oh, I'd love to have the coffee, but if I don't have it, it's all good. They need the coffee. They need the coffee. They need the coffee. And so without it, protector strategy of like manipulation might come in. Well, I gave you something like a couple of weeks ago when you need it. You can't even give this to me now, because that protector strategy is coming in to try to avoid the feelings coming up. So protector strategies can be, over perfection, staying busy, overworking. That's also addiction, an addiction to work. It can be being in more of like a know-it-all energy or over giving to someone. It could be just like needing to adventure all the time. It could be needing to understand things intellectually, constantly go into the intellect, right? There's all these different ways. Pleasing, overgiving, always being a martyr, always being a mediator. These are different examples of protector strategies. So these protectors and these addictions both work together as tools that the head will wield, the fear mind will wield, in order to stop the emotional pain coming up. But if someone can actually be with their emotions and learn to healthily regulate their emotions, then the need for addiction goes. But if someone's going through life and they're constantly needing to be this person, this protector strategy to avoid feeling, to feel safe, so they stay in control, and they're needing to do all these addictive strategies, they're not even in control of their life. They're not even choosing what to do. It's chosen for them and they can't not do it. It has to happen. Because if not, the emotional pain is going to come up and they're not prepared to experience that. So when someone has emotional pain and the inability to feel it, they are being completely owned by their addictions and protector strategies, unhealthy behaviors, procrastinating, binge watching Netflix, all these different addiction strategies and protector strategies, right? And that's not a way to live. That's not a way to live. It doesn't matter how much personal development work you've done, doesn't matter how many healing sessions you've done. If in the moments where emotional pain comes up, you don't know how to feel them, you're going to be completely owned by your addictions and protection strategies. Okay? So that is why feeling our emotions is important. That's part of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the journey and the different ways in which you can learn to feel. I'm going to start that by going back to one of my first few plant medicine ceremonies was 6 years ago, was when I felt deeply for the first time in a long time. And so I had a vulnerability hangover from that. I had deep emotional pain from my upbringing come up, this like sadness of my mum leaving when I was 13 arise. I really felt it and I was just bawling and bawling and bawling. And it was beautiful at the time and I felt so free in my emotional expression. But then the next day came along, and after the substance that was withholding my head, my ego, that control part of me, that was kind of subdued by the plant medicine. Then when the plant medicine went away, instead of the head, the controller part of my mind, that fear consciousness being tied up so that the authentic me could play and feel and express and be myself, the ropes loosened and that part came back and was like, how dare you tie me up? Can't believe you felt all these things yesterday. What the hell? We're going back in control right now. That was dangerous. We ain't doing that again. No vulnerability happening again. And I just whiplash shut and just felt this massive vulnerability hangover. And I felt, what's the point of feeling? So that control part of my mind started to feed all these stories. Why would I even feel? Where's the productiveness in that? How's that going to help anything? And so coming back to that fact that I've been living my entire life in the past validated by people for being someone that's good at suppressing my emotions, that's stoic and doesn't feel stress and doesn't feel the pain from a relationship. I've just moved on. Easy. Just get on with it. Oh, wow. How'd you do that? So impressive. Going from that place and then all of a sudden feeling, and then my mind's like, nah, we ain't doing that feeling stuff. And so I literally had to say to my friend, what's the point? Who was there in that plant medicine ceremony with me, my best friend. And he was like, had to sell me on the purpose of feeling. And at the time, the way that he did that was, well, imagine right now, I took away the ability for you to see color and you can only see the world through black and white. Would you be open to that? I was like, no. And then he's like, well, if you can't feel, you're going through the motions, you're doing things, but it's like the color of the feeling component. So visually, if you took away the color, it'd take away the substance, the juice, the energy, the beauty. If you're going through life and you're not feeling the positive and negative emotions that come with life, you're metaphorically feeling life in black and white. You're numbed to it. They're monotones. You're not actually getting the juice, the full experience of life. And that was a beautiful analogy for me that inspired me enough to start to go on my emotional healing journey. Now, the first part of the emotional healing journey, and people that are very experienced in trauma work, inner child work, breath work, emotional and somatic release work, and they've gone there and felt a lot of things, a lot of their pain from their past, have done this first component that I'm going to speak to, but struggle with the nuance of what emotional development in what I currently perceive. A future version of me may disagree, but currently I see as the most advanced form of emotional healing. This first phase often doesn't encourage people to feel things in a way that supports their development to the highest degree. And I'll explain how and why, but let's start with chapter 1 of emotional development. It's learning to feel. That's it. Learning to feel, accessing the emotion. It's difficult. It's got to feel. You've got to really go there. You've got to really go there. I've done so many. I've got my own healing modality that I haven't done a huge amount with over the last 18 months. But it's essentially a mother-father wound healing modality, a really deep 3.5 hour, very specifically guided healing sequence that initially gets people to, well, not initially, but in the first kind of third of it, at a big chunk of that time, third to half, is of getting really, really angry towards the particular parent that the healing's happening on. And most of the time when I do this healing with someone, they say, I don't have any anger towards them. Like, I understand they did the best they could. You know, like they were, I don't have any anger. Like, I forgive them. They didn't do anything. They just did the best they could. And there's no anger in there. And then 15 minutes later, they're calling their parent an F and this, a C this, and they're going crazy. They're punching the crap out of the pillows, smashing it, doing all this intense emotional release work because they had suppressed their anger towards their parents. And so, you know, that is part of teaching. And there's a lot of spiritual practitioners that bypass the emotional healing journey. There's a lot of people that have been deep in spirituality for 10, 20, 30 years, and they haven't yet gone to the emotional body. They go from normal human life, reality, normal integratives, how to show up in life and do the normal things. And then they sit in their meditation, cross-legged, and voomp, they transcend to this other reality, but they bypass the emotional body when they do it. So there's this very compartmentalized approach to life. There is, this is me normally, this is me transcended in bliss, but I really love the way that Adyashanti talks about the difference between transcending the ego and maturing the ego. Muji, the spiritual guru, only believes that instant transcendence and instant enlightenment is the way. Emotional healing work is a waste of time. It's a distraction. You're just not going to the source. Go to the source. Just transcend. Bathe in bliss. That's your answer. You don't need to play around with all this other stuff. I disagree big time because emotional behavior influences us. You come out of the meditation, yeah, you might have been bathing in bliss, but then you come out and you see your parents and you get triggered, or you're in a relationship and you get frustrated, your partner's not meditating as much as you are, and all the triggers come out. So it's like if you don't learn to mature the ego, remember I said the head is the aspect that tries to control and block the emotions, but simultaneously the head's where all the emotions are stored, all the trauma is stored, all the pain from the past is stored. And so if we don't learn to mature the ego and develop ourselves emotionally, then there's going to be problems long term. And there's going to be this black and white, all or nothing approach. I'm either enlightened or I've got a really kind of crappy human reality. And that's what a lot of spiritual practitioners have. And I don't say that to put them down. I say that to shine light on the importance of doing the emotional work. The spiritual work is also important. And it's amazing that the people who are meditators and that do that work, they go there, because it's very difficult to learn to have the courage to let go. Very difficult. But it's also very difficult to have the courage to feel. And that's what we're talking about here. So, anywho, the first part of the emotional healing journey is learning to access the feelings, when probably anyone that hasn't done this journey yet have spent a lifetime learning to suppress their emotions. And I was on a joint live with my loving partner, Shana, last night on Instagram, talking about emotional eating. And something that came up on that call was like, Shana's not about diets because she's a qualified nutritionist. Very, very amazing at what she does. That's not her genius zone, but she just happens to have that set of skills up her sleeve and wisdom up her sleeve. And it's definitely not about diets. It's about wholesome, whole food eating. And diets are the enemy. But I jumped on the live and I said, I think going on a diet would be perfect to overcome emotional eating, because as soon as you take away all the satiating foods that suppress your emotions, you take away those emotion suppressants, those addictions, the emotional eating, take it away. What's going to happen? Your emotions will come up. Then when you sit with them, what's going to happen? You're not going to act. You're going to slowly let go of the pull that the emotional eating has on you, that your head has on you, trying to control you away from feeling. Yeah. So the first thing to do is to get good at feeling. And I honestly believe that the best, most effective initial way to do that is breath work. Transformational breath work, shamanic breath work, biodynamic breath work, awaken breath work, holotropic breath work. These are all more intense, consciously connected breathing, slightly more subtle, but will still eventually be effective. Because what happens is when we breathe and we're flooding our body with oxygen, it takes us out of our mind. That's why I love it. If I'm doing a coaching session with someone and I can tell they're on the cusp of going into the emotional, there's that old saying, you got to feel it to heal it. And on some level, it's true. And I'm going to explain how that can also be toxic in a way, what I just said, in it, like as we get through this podcast. But you do have to go there and be with the emotions. If we just talk about what happens without going to the emotions first, then the emotions are still in there controlling someone's behavior, because again, their head's going to constantly be trying to avoid them and guide them away from it. So your head is controlling your life and you're doing things you don't even want to do, all because you're trying to avoid feeling the pain that's underneath. But if you can feel it, let it out, that can cause a lot of reprieve and a lot of freedom can get excavated through that. So breath work, getting us so into our body. When I guide a breathwork journey for somebody, what I was actually saying a moment ago is if I'm in a healing and they're close to the emotions, but they just keep getting in their head about it, I just get them to do breathing, even for 5 or 10 minutes, and then boom, they can't help but feel the emotions. Because when you're in your body and when the emotions are there, it brings the emotions up. Yes, you could control yourself out of it if you really wanted, but if your intention is to learn to feel and you go into a guided breathwork journey, then you're probably going to be able to feel. And that is because you're so out of your head, because the oxygenation of the body and the blood creates just this full body experience, because there's so much shift happening in your bloodstream, and your bloodstream goes over your entire body. So it creates this focus on the body. It's not all that breath work does, but it's in the function of feeling emotion, it is brilliant. Brilliant. Now, this leads me to my next point. I said stage 1 is learning how to feel. Learning how to feel by yourself is confronting. Oftentimes, the emotional pain that we have, what happens on the healing journey on one layer is that the further along the healing journey we go, the more our nervous system feels safe to hold intense emotional pain. The further along the journey, the more pain we've held, the more our nervous system trusts us with pain that's in there. And so what I've always found on the healing journey with clients is that layers get peeled back. Usually when I start doing inner child work with someone, the age of their inner child is a little bit older, and the longer the healing work I do with them and the emotional work I do with them, their inner child appears in their mind and in their field as a younger version of themselves. And usually there's like more deeply felt pain with the younger traumas, because someone's more dependent, more vulnerable, and therefore the perception of pain from a real young dependent baby can be bigger than the perception of pain from a 7-year-old. Not to judge, and it's not always linear like that, but I find that people's nervous systems, the more that they feel, the more the nervous system then trusts that person to feel even more. And so it's a layered approach. It's a layered journey. And so the reason I'm pre-framing this is because my initial suggestion is that if you don't have the ability to hold physical discomfort, emotional discomfort in your physical body, and to feel those emotions yourself because you're new to it and your nervous system hasn't built up that trust, that safety yet, knowing that you can hold it, because you can't yet. You haven't proved that you can. You haven't learnt to yet, it can be really powerful to have someone else hold space for you, to start delving into your emotions in healing sessions, breath work. I just reckon breath work is brilliant to start. So I'm just going to encourage breath work. But there are lots of other ways as well. There's like full emotional healing sessions where there's breath, sound, and movement all combined into different ways, or there's talk therapy combined with somatic work and embodiment work, getting you into the body and then letting things out by gesturing and doing emotional release techniques like smashing pillows and primal stomping and primal thrusting and wailing, which is like when you down on your knees and you're looking up to the heavens and you're kind of faking cries, but it leads to authentic cries, kind of like laughing classes. Laughing can be another way that emotions and energy gets extracted from the body, released from the body, or felt. So I initially recommend having someone that can help hold space for you while you're learning to hold it for yourself, right? I really recommend that. And it could be, as long as you're with someone that can hold space, that's very experienced, and you have the knowing in your nervous system, in your body, you can trust yourself to go, I trust this person, whether it's plant medicine, whether it's breath work, whether you're doing it with a psychologist and that's what you need to feel safe, those credentials, or whether you just can feel that someone's got you and you trust them because you built up that rapport with them. But having someone that can assist you and hold space earlier on that journey to teach you how to feel and to be there and hold the pain that you might not be able to hold for yourself, that's really valuable. That's really valuable. And the reason that it can be valuable is when we're learning how to feel and we don't feel safe in our emotions initially in our nervous system, the littlest thing can cause you to cover up and close up again. I'm projecting here in the sense that for me, if I've got emotional vulnerability present and I'm around people that don't feel comfortable in their own emotions, them just saying one thing can just have me close up. They just might be like, oh, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. And then I'm just like, boom, I feel like I'm being judged. Oh, I'm closed. Emotion's not coming out anymore. Or someone just says, cool, what are you feeling now? And it's set at a point where they're just like not giving me enough space to be with myself. Boom, I close up. So someone that's very practiced and experienced, very embodied in the sense that you know they've gone there on their own emotional healing journey and they can really hold that space in a way that creates safety for you and teaches you how to feel safe. That can be just instrumental for the trajectory of your emotional healing journey. Yeah, meaning that it can make the journey go a lot quicker because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If you're working with someone that makes it smooth because they go slowly, they know how to create safety and it makes the process smooth for you, and nothing happens in your first exposures to emotional healing, it's not super jarring, then that smoothness creates more speed. Whereas if you try to feel and you have some really, like you have a bad trip in a plant medicine journey because you do it by yourself, or you do it with a friend and you consider it to be a bad trip, essentially more came up than what you knew how to hold. And so you're like, that was terrible. That's jarring. That's not smooth. That's not going to lead to fast unfolding of your emotions. That's going to lead to probably covering up and tucking your emotional development journey in a box and putting it away for a while before readdressing it. So anyway, initially it's about learning to feel. You can learn to feel at my Art of Courage workshop. I teach it. You can go to breathwork events. You can work with practitioners that you trust that are emotional healing practitioners, or you could do a one-to-one breathwork or a group breathwork, as long as it's somewhere that you feel called to go and you feel safe. But getting support and space holding where someone has been there and they can hold you in it and that elevates your safety, really big, awesome initial thing to do. Anyway, so learning to feel is important. That's the first stage of this, because if it's something that's new, if you get reps in, not there's a competition or we're trying to like win at it, but if you get exposure to feeling, then your body and nervous system starts to feel safer and you start to know how to feel. So instead of feelings coming up and that controller coming in and just instantly trying to suppress away, come up with some stories to distract and not feel, get up in the head, all the personality patterns, protection strategies come in, or all the addictive tendencies start to consume your mind. Instead of that happening, you actually start to learn to feel. That's so important and instrumental. And that's where I say breath work, somatic release work, emotional release work, healing work, trauma work, inner child work, internal family systems, parts work, all these different beautiful modalities, even things like completion process with Teal Swan, or even I'm not a massive fan of it, even NLP or timeline therapy, anything that can get you to feel can be productive and valuable. And there are set ways to access feeling, like sadness. I find that often like a fetal position on the ground can be a beautiful way to call the sadness in, and then shift in the body language to being more open when you've started the flow of sadness. Using props and music, sad music can be really helpful. Angry music if you want to let anger out. And trusting your intuitive movement. Like anger, to start getting angry, speaking can be a really powerful thing. Speaking and making noise, breath, sound, movement, touch, and then environmental factors, meaning like you're in a place that's safe, where you feel like it's private enough that you can open up, and you're in a place that feels safe, like it's comfortable, can be really supportive as well. And then using music to guide your journey can be really valuable tools. But understanding that emotion is energy in motion, meaning that if there's emotions stuck in your body and they're attached to memories and trauma and stuff from your upbringing, and it's in there, in order to get it in motion, like using breath, which is a form of vibration, sound, which is a form of vibration, and movement, which is a form of vibration, that gets the energy stimulated and can actually release it. And often it's stuck in different aspects of our body. This is what somatic release work is. Somatics is body, soma is body, working with the body. So somatic release work, sometimes for the reason, what I'm saying here is that if you got anger in you, I find that different sorts of anger releases, like a temper tantrum or primal stomping, where I'm throwing my arms up in the air and or shaking, moving my whole body up and down, that can be a way to bring on emotion and actually let go of that emotion. Whereas if I'm just trying to get angry and I'm not really moving, I'm just screaming like into my hand or screaming out loud, but I'm completely stiff, there could be energy that's in there that's not yet in motion because it's stuck. And you can use breath, sound, and movement by trusting the movement of your body, by smashing down or laying on the bed and doing a temper tantrum where your legs are really moving, or primal thrusting where you're literally humping a pillow. But there can be a lot of shame and stuck emotion in the hip area. You can move that around a bunch. This is why being in a safe private space is important. But there are different movements and ways. If you just use breath, sound, movement, and an environment that's safe, that can really support the movement of energy, which is emotion. So that's chapter 1. That's how to feel initially. Most people, though, when they start getting on the emotional healing journey, are doing the healing journey to become a certain person so that they can receive certain things from life, usually outside of themselves. It's usually something that they believe is going to lead to love. Okay? So just let that land for a second. Usually when people approach the emotional healing journey, or they're on the emotional healing journey, unconsciously, the reason that they're doing the work in the first place, the reason they got onto the healing journey, I'm speaking from experience here, and I've witnessed it with every single client I've ever had, every single client, from multimillionaires to men, women, old, young, super advanced people that lead movements of thousands and thousands of people that have coached people for just thousands of sessions, clinical psychologists that I've supported that have done over 10,000 sessions. Literally, all of these people I have found in my experience usually still are on this journey to try to change themselves. And so the emotional healing journey, when they go to feel and they go to do an emotional release, it's actually coming from a place of trying to be someone different. So just bookmark that thought. Bookmark that thought for a second. People are usually doing emotional work to try to change who they are. So I've heard this in lots of different certification programs I've been in, that if someone doesn't have compassion for themselves while they're releasing emotion, then it's going to recycle, meaning that they feel the emotion, it's in their body, but it's not actually releasing. It just keeps swirling around inside. They feel it, but it comes back, or it doesn't go anywhere. And so in order to release, compassion needs to be present. And compassion means to suffer with. And if we paraphrase that, it's to be with. And what I found, and trust me when I say, the people that I usually attract one-to-one in the work that I do are super advanced coaches that have been coaching for years and years and years and years. They understand psychedelics, they understand meditation, they understand emotional processing, they understand trauma work, inner child work, somatic emotional release work, parts work, all of it. They've done a million modalities. They've been doing it for years. They've been on their healing journey for 10 plus years. They get it, but they don't get it. They don't get this. Because most people that get into personal, spiritual, and emotional development get into the path because they think they're broken, and they try to feel to heal. They're trying to heal, emotional healing. They're trying to heal because they think they're unhealed. And just that essence, that nuance of feeling to try to change who they are collapses the very foundation of what causes emotional processing to be healthy. Feeling to heal, to change someone, to solve a problem, to move on, to get better. Just that in essence collapses the foundation of what makes emotional healing productive. So if you've got some emotion in you in a day and you're like, need to do a breath work, got to get this processed. It's not coming out. I'm going to breathe harder, get it out. It's out now. Thank gosh. Did the healing work. Every single emotional charge that we have is attached to a memory in our body. And that memory is a fragmented part of our psychology. In other words, there's a fragmented part, a lost part, an inner child in most cases, because most emotional trauma in general, the big bulk of it comes from our childhood, as we know. So if there's emotion that's in the body that you're wanting to release, and there's a desire to get rid of it, there's a desire to get rid of a part of yourself. Okay? There's a desire to get rid of a part of yourself. Because most of the time, again, the emotional and the personal development journey for people is a way to try to solve their brokenness. It's a way to try to solve their brokenness. And so they're trying to get rid of a part of themselves. So when they do the emotional work, they are trying to release, push away, move aside the inconvenience, which they don't realize at the time that they're turning their head, they're turning away from themselves. They don't have compassion. They're not there to suffer with. They're there to push away. Go away, get out, release, move away. That's not what they're saying consciously, but unconsciously. It's, I want to get rid of you because I think that I should be somewhere else. And I think I need my dream partner. And this emotional healing work that I haven't yet done is blocking me from having my dream partner. So I want to do the emotional healing work because it's in my way right now from my dream partner. And I want to move it away so I get my dream partner because then I'll be worthy. Problem. That's a problem. Reason why is because you're rejecting yourself to try to get love. You're rejecting yourself to try to get love. And so you're blocking love to try to get love. If you're attempting to feel and to do emotional processing work or release work in order to fix yourself, you're rejecting yourself to try to not reject, be rejected. See how that makes no sense? Logically, if you're feeling to fix yourself, you're actually instantly blocking love because you're not loving yourself by trying to reject it, by trying to get rid of a part of yourself. So you're instantly rejecting yourself, thinking that when you heal this part, release this part, do this healing work, this trauma work, then you're going to get to some future place that's better. And then in that future place, you're going to be more worthy of love and life's going to be better. You're rejecting a part of yourself in the process. And so that causes recycling. That's the nuance behind it, because that inner child that you're turning your back on is still there, because that part's not alchemizing within you to become a part of you that you love and accept. It's actually being pushed away, and it starts walking around and turns back towards you, and then comes back and keeps tugging on your love, on your leg, in your jeans, metaphorically speaking, on your pants. Like it's not going away. It comes back because it's still remaining fragmented, rejected by you. It was initially rejected by your parents because when you're younger, we rely on our parents for emotional regulation. We're dependent on them. We actually need the difference between a child and an adult is a child is soothed, nurtured, and regulated by somebody else. But when someone becomes an adult and they move out of childhood, then the responsibility is on them to soothe, regulate, and nurture themselves emotionally. But as a child, we're completely dependent on love is the currency. Love. And any moment when you're a child and there's emotions that are present, there's a part of you that's being expressed and there isn't unconditional love coming from a parent, the belief that that child forms when they needed unconditional love and acceptance to be celebrated for who they are, whatever they received instead, whether it was their mum walking away all the time, whether it was their dad getting angry, that's the belief that they form of what love is. That is the belief that they form of what love is. So in the moments when you were younger and you needed love, unconditional love, just presence, someone channeling their full attention on you, just for who you are, even if you're crying, screaming, yelling, whatever, and instead you receive some kind of other strategy because they're projecting their discomfort with your emotion unconsciously. They're doing the best they can, but that's what's happening. However they're treating you becomes your belief unconsciously of what love actually is. And then you keep attracting it. That's why people that are abused when they're younger attract people that abuse them when they're older. That's why people that had a parent that was unavailable attract a partner that becomes unavailable, because their actual body is, and their brain thinks that's love. It's not though. So the emotional healing journey becomes advanced when instead of feeling to heal in order to reject and change yourself, even if the feeling still comes up in the exact same way, but the way in which it's done is through the energy of love and acceptance for who you are. That's integrative, not fragmenting. That's integrating. Integrative, meaning that, so this is the difference. This is a simple difference. And this is simple. I'm going to go deeper into this in another future podcast episode, because this is just more of a macro map of how the emotional healing landscape works. I'm going to tie it all in on here. But if emotion comes up for you and you're starting to feel it, you've learned to feel, you've become aware of when you're feeling grief, anger, sadness, whatever, fear, shame, and you've become aware, you're going throughout your day, you become aware of the fact, oh, there's some sadness in there. Oh, I'm going to do a breath work because I'm going to get this up and out. Cool. You're rejecting yourself there and you're actually fragmenting yourself, keeping yourself fragmented. So you're recycling. So even though you felt the emotion and you brought up the pain, it didn't leave because that inner child's still feeling rejected. And so you're not moving towards unconditional love and wholeness, which is the purpose of this journey. Instead, you're just recycling the emotion. Because the essence, and this is why I said stage one's learning to feel, but it doesn't necessarily, it's important, it's functional, it has to happen. And there's going to be a point where you transition from feeling to change yourself to feeling because you love yourself. Let that land. You're going to hit a point where you stop feeling for the purpose of changing yourself and you start feeling because you love yourself. Being with vulnerable emotions in the unconditional present form that you really craved when you were a kid in those moments. This is what the emotional healing work looks like in a really advanced, even though it's more simple, it's more advanced form of healing, is that the sadness comes up in the day. Now you're aware of it, which is amazing. You have tools to feel it, which is awesome. But you're not going, cool, I need to feel this to get rid of the sadness so I can heal and improve. And now I'm more clear. And now I'm going to get the thing that I desperately need to get to be worthy of love. No. Oh, there's some sadness there. This gives me the opportunity, because I'm just going to finish what I'm saying. This gives me the opportunity to sit with myself and show myself and reteach myself, reparent myself to actually learn what unconditional love looks like. I'm just going to be there with myself. I'm not going to force the sadness out. I'm just going to be there with myself because I love myself. That's what happens if a child, get it out, get that sadness out so we can get on with our day. The child's not feeling unconditionally loved. They're feeling like an inconvenience, right? They're feeling like they should apologize for who they are. And that is toxic shame. That's what toxic shame is. I spoke about it in my previous solo episode, right? Toxic shame is believing that I'm shameful and I feel embarrassed to be who I am. If you're trying to rush and stop someone's authentic expression as a child, that's not coming from unconditional love. That's shaming, and that creates toxic shame. So you get to rewrite the pattern every single time an emotion is present and it comes up, and you sit with yourself because you love yourself, not to try to fix yourself, but because you love yourself. You're then coming in as the pseudo parent, the surrogate parent. You're reparenting yourself in the way that your inner child want to do from a place of wholeness, fullness. You're giving them the attention they wanted and desired and deserve. You're actually teaching yourself that you're worthy of unconditional love. When you sit with yourself because you love yourself, not because you try to fix or change yourself, you're teaching yourself what unconditional love looks like. And the more that you do that, every time some trigger comes up, every time some emotion comes up, every time your wounding, emotional pain surfaces in your life, it's an opportunity to become more whole. Because you get the gift of being able to give yourself what you deserved as a child but didn't receive. Parents weren't bad, they did the best they could. And now you get to rewrite that script and teach yourself unconditional love. And the really cool thing about that is that the more that you bathe yourself in unconditional love, the more that you feel that, teach yourself to have that, the more that the world reflects it back. The more that you're going to attract people that love you for who you are, because you're actually giving yourself permission to be you. So other people give you permission to be you. You sit with yourself unconditionally, so people give you presence and attention. And your life becomes more fulfilling. That's freedom. So, tying this back into why did I do this episode? I did this episode because I wanted to make it really clear and remind, because for most of you, this will be a reminder. I'm explaining it like I'm teaching you for the first time, but I'm aware that for most of you, it's going to be a reminder that all addiction sources from suppressed emotional pain. Every time you go to scroll on your phone, if you put the phone down and you stop scrolling, and there's going to be something to be with there. There's discomfort in the nervous system. That's why it's difficult to sit still and not buy into this ADHD, hyper dopamine rich addiction to drama, satiation, and constantly like going into distraction, short-term gratification. I need it. That compulsive nature that most people, this is why so many people have anxiety, because anxiety and these avoiding emotion, suppression, distraction literally feeds itself and gets stronger. So when we put the phone down, the sugar down, when we put the porn away, when we put all these addiction strategies to the side and we notice it and put on a stopwatch or a timer for 10 minutes and just sit still with yourself, with the emotion, what happens is you start to rewrite the script that you're not worthy of love and replace it with a knowing in your body, a feeling of wholeness that you deserve love because you are love. And so every time we feel some compulsive tendency to want to stuff our face with food, or get into a scroll hole or something like this. Might feel like an uphill battle to try to get it right, but just by shifting the behavior without feeling the cause is an absolute impossibility to solve the root issue. I use the word solve, which doesn't do it justice, because the root cause is that you were taught as a child that you're not worthy of unconditional love. Not because your parents didn't do their best, but because that's just the nature of being raised, because we then come in and get to be our own, be the love that we've been looking for our whole life. We get to teach ourselves that unconditional love. That's part of the gift. And so every single time an addictive tendency comes in and you feel that pull, if you can just pause on the addiction and sit with yourself, then you're going to actually feel so much more whole. And if you sit with yourself long enough just to, and just trust and accept whatever comes up. If the emotion doesn't come up, that's okay. That presence you're giving yourself is the ultimate gift. And afterwards, you're going to feel a lot lighter. The cravings will be less and you'll be a hell of a lot more present in your life. So it's not like you need the food. You need your presence. That's what you're looking for. But your head's trying to stop that emotional pain coming up. It's trying to do anything it can to distract away from it and avoid it. But you, with awareness, with this podcast and all the other healing work and people you've listened to, can give you that opportunity to intervene in that compulsive cycle and just give yourself the gift of presence instead. That is special. And I did a 10-week bout of healing that taught me so much over the last 10. I think I finished it a couple of weeks ago. And during the 10 weeks, I spent 40 minutes twice a day. So what's that, like an hour, almost 90 minutes a day sitting in myself. And I did more than that because there were times where throughout that where I would sit with myself more. But as a bare minimum, I would do 2 40-minute sessions a day of just sitting with myself, giving myself presence and unconditional love, which was unbearable at times. Or I would notice right before my sessions, I would just start craving and so agitated, just not wanting to do the practice because my head was like, don't do it. Don't go into the unfamiliar. Don't get vulnerable. It's risky. It's risky. Let's stay safe and avoid that stuff. Let's go back to our emotional home of scrolling and that anxiety. We can at least control that. We know that how to be in that zone, but I don't want to go to the grief. I don't want to go to the sadness. I don't want to go to the agitation. I don't want to go to that heat. That heat, so much heat came up and out in my body. And it was so incredible. It was the first time in my whole adult life where I wasn't emotionally eating. Because even though I have a very healthy, I don't eat unhealthy foods, I still eat more than I need a lot of the time. But during this, I was eating just less than what I felt like I needed in every meal and able just to sit with that. Whereas in the past, that would be an impossibility because I need it, because I cannot feel that pain. I do not want to let it surface. But then what was really interesting was after the 10 weeks, I had a little break. So I wasn't doing 2 40-minute sessions a day of sitting with myself. All of my emotional eating, craving and whatnot came back. The distraction came back because I'm still in the process of letting go personally on my journey of so much pain. My little inner child, I call him Little King. He just felt so much pain by being in freeze so often when he was being yelled at when he was a child, and when my mum left and he didn't know what to do, or both my parents being drug addicts and alcoholics, serious mental health issues. And I was stepping in as the parent a lot of the time. And they're beautiful humans. You'd hope so, but I really love my parents so much. And I'm so impressed at how they've been able to navigate their lives, given the cards they were dealt. But nevertheless, not minimizing the pain for my inner child. There's a lot of pain in there. I'm still very much on this journey. And if I give myself that gift, instead of searching for that addictive short-term gratification hit to shift my sensory experience, to suppress and push down that emotion and push away my inner child, when I'm able to sit with him and just be present and feel what's alive without judgment and with compassion, to suffer with him, to be there with him, that's love. That's love. That's what emotional healing looks like in its most advanced form. It's so simple. And so it's not as cool and exciting. Oh, it's this form of breath work, and you do 30 breaths with this, and then 20 of this, and then 30 seconds here, and then you shake in this way, and then you do a breath hold, and then you cycle 3 times. That's just being with yourself. Yeah. Not that I don't have a bunch of powerful healing sequences that I give my students to teach them to feel and to bring emotions up that they may not be able to bring up on themselves intentionally and proactively. However, you have ample opportunity every day, because your mind is going to call for distraction every day, because life is designed to trigger the scenarios that make us feel what we felt as kids that didn't get to complete that loop of expression. I'll say that again. Life is literally designed. The universe is coordinating very intelligently your entire life situation to trigger feelings that you didn't sit with yourself unconditionally with as a child, because you were dependent on your parents and they didn't do that. So the universe literally triggers scenarios that make you feel what you felt and didn't get to be with unconditionally, so that you can be with yourself now. And so there's ample opportunity. And if you don't reach for the addiction, if you witness yourself in your protection strategy and you give yourself that presence, that unconditional love, and you sit with your emotion, you literally access freedom, because no longer are you shackled to all these addictive tendencies and your mind just desperately controlling your movements that you don't want to do. I know nobody wants to emotionally eat. They need to emotionally eat. No one wants to compulsively scroll. They need to compulsively scroll. Yeah. And so that's not a way to live. That's not fulfillment. It's okay. You're not going to hear this and then just be able to perfectly implement what I'm suggesting here. I can't do that. I'm improving over time. And the more that I let go of, the more awareness I have, because the less shadow control that part of me uses. So it definitely gets easier, but it's not as similar and linear as that. So again, like I said earlier, the more that we feel, the more our nervous system trusts that we can hold deeper pain. And then it allows the surfacing of something that you couldn't previously hold to come up, which will arguably be more painful and more debilitating than what you've experienced up until this point. And I've seen this where people didn't even know that they had sexual abuse. And it wasn't until they had done several months, years of healing for their nervous system to trust them enough that it reveals the memories that were stored there and suppressed because it was too painful to acknowledge that that happened. And now it comes up. You're going to free yourself more and more and more. And it's so crazy with the awareness that I have now, just getting to witness how people live their lives. I can witness when people have trauma. It's all over them. I can see their compulsive tendencies. I can see the addictive strategies, and just know they don't know how to feel. They don't know how to sit with themselves. It is so difficult. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's also the ticket to freedom. It's your actual ticket to freedom. Because the opposite of it is being captive in what I call the hypnotic prison of the mind, or head hypnosis, put in a trance, constantly being drifted off into sedation with the addictive tendencies. So you're stuffed down, you're numbed out. That ain't a way to live. So that's the nuance. That's the power. That's an opportunity. So what do you do with this? Well, observe yourself. Observe yourself. I have this epic watch. It's a Casio. People in my circle are always joking about it. I'm pretty much an affiliate rep for these, even though I don't get any commissions, unfortunately. It's like $50. I sold my $1,000 Garmin watch, super radiating EMFs like crazy on my wrist and on my body 24/7. traded in for this thing that's got a 10-year battery in it, which means that that's how little power it uses. Doesn't need to be charged. It's got enough battery for 10 years. And I use a little timer on there, so I don't have to get my phone out all the time and then go back into a loop of distraction. If I want to sit with myself because I'm feeling myself pulled to some addictive tendencies, straight onto the watch, timer, 10 minutes, sit there, be with it. But then I proactively do my practices that give me the chance to sit with myself and reestablish that relationship with myself that I can so easily get swept back into head hypnosis, where I'm unaware of my mind controlling my behaviors and putting me back into sedation, putting me back into trance. And I get to actually intervene, jump in, love myself for who and where I am, and be with myself in my emotions. And that, beautiful listeners and viewers, is the ultimate gift. So I will remind you, I do this at the start, the Art of Courage workshop. What I want you to do, if you're here, I work with small 6, 7 one-to-one clients at a time and support them with their healing journey. But to be honest with you, if you come along to my signature workshop, The Art of Courage, we go deep into this work and then talk about how it integrates with pursuing your purpose. Because if you have got the courage to feel, it's the same feeling in the body of resistance that comes up for that as to what kicks in when you go to do some big action in your business. Yeah. It's all intertwined. And so it's a tailored series of experiences and practices that teach you how to be with discomfort. It's a difficult workshop, but it's incredibly fulfilling. And it's a series of practices and models that will change the way that you live forever and see the world forever. It is brilliant. It really is brilliant. It was gifted to me from spirit. And then I've integrated it with my own human self and stories and experiences. But it's an amazing workshop, very reasonably priced. So come along, if you haven't already, to the Art of Courage workshop. Thank you for tuning in. Please, as always, if there's any feedback or anything that's touched you in an episode specifically, let me know. Connect to me through the gram at the Ryan Magic. If you've got any questions about the workshop, hit me up, ryan@ryanmagic.com. Go to the website. You can find out more information there. I love you guys heaps. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.